Supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner, the podcast designed to support you, the dog parent, in your dog parenting journey. I hope you are well and having a lovely week. So this week I thought I would explore a little bit more about a topic that has been a little bit more prevalent in my life recently, and that is pain in dogs. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll probably have seen on our stories recently that one of my dogs has been having hydrotherapy. Dave, the eldest dog, he's been having some hydrotherapy after an injury, sort of in November, or not an injury, but a spout of illness in November. And I think it's worth us talking about the topic of how we recognise pain in dogs, because it's very subtle and a lot of people are, and me, myself included, overlook things. Yeah, I thought it was a good topic to talk about. So first things first, obviously, let me tell you a little bit about Dave. So if you've listened to Dave's podcast episode, it's way back at the beginning, you'll probably have, I'm sure I will have mentioned that Dave he's a bigger boy, love him. He's a very big Labrador, not through obesity, but just he's a big boned boy. His whole litter are big dogs. They're proper show labs, really, really deep chested. And solid lumps. It's a battle to keep him healthy. And that's down to the fact that he also has a genetic condition that we didn't know about when obviously we got him, because we wouldn't have. Wouldn't change him for the world, love him as he is, but he has a genetic condition that basically means he can't over-exercise. So he's a big boy anyway. He's not a working line dog who is like born to move and high energy. So he's quite a sedate dog. He's a big boy. And yeah, it can be a challenge to keep him trim. And to be honest, he's doing really well at the moment in terms of trimness, because he hasn't got injuries. Obviously, when we first discovered that he had this genetic condition, basically, if he over-exercises, he can collapse. And he had 3 episodes when he was younger. They were very scary because we were out on a walk, we didn't know what it was, and suddenly it was almost like he couldn't use his back legs. Very, very scary. After a couple of episodes, we did a little research. One of the other litter mums from his litter did a bit more research and just found out that the dogs had this genetic mutation or genetic thing that basically means they collapse if they over-exercise. So there you go. So we've always had to be very, very mindful of him not doing too much, but he's very sensible. We're very lucky. He's a very sensible boy, that he does know when he's done too much and he knows when to stop. So we don't have to manage it too well. He kind of self-manages it. Anyway, on tangent. So when he was about 3, he hurt his shoulder. No idea what he did. He didn't do anything significantly. He just come home from a walk one day and started limping. Obviously went to the vet. You know what it's like. The second you get them there, they stop limping, right? Everyone's had that situation. He had some painkillers, sorted itself out. Didn't really have an issue with it. And then ever since, I'd say probably a couple of years later, so sort of the last 3 or 4 years maybe, every now and again, he goes lame on his shoulder and starts limping. We give him a couple of days rest, give him a few painkillers, and he's off again. He's fine. And that's kind of been a recurring cycle. But he's very, very particular in terms of what he likes, what he doesn't like. He doesn't like touch. He's not a cuddly dog. If you sat on the sofa and you rested your arm on him or went to stroke him, he'd be like, go away. I don't want to fuss. And I've always been conscious that he's very wary. He's a very aware dog. He doesn't like his toenails being clipped. He doesn't like being brushed. He's a very sensitive boy. He doesn't like being in pain. Anything he thinks is going to cause him pain, he's like, no, don't do that. So the things like ear cleaning and the essential stuff you have to do to keep them healthy are hard. The cooperative care stuff he's not good with. So it's a hard task to keep him on board. So we do a lot of little and often stuff with him. And I was fully aware that I wanted him to have massage. I knew he'd benefit from it because our previous dog did. And it's taken me a really long time to actually build up his relationship with a lady who does massage and chiropractic work, Jay, who's been on the podcast previously. So I'm aware that, after that, there was obviously some tightness and some areas that had issues. And I was aware that he was showing signs of discomfort, but obviously he doesn't let you help him, which is really frustrating, isn't it? He started seeing Jay after a little bit of a period of time. We saw huge improvements. He hardly ever went lame. So for the last sort of 18 months, year, he's not been lame at all. He's been happier with us touching him. He's liked grooming. We've been able to stroke him and cuddle him a bit more, and he's been more affectionate. So it shows that the treatment he's had has been helping. And then In November, we went on a long walk. When we were away, actually, we went away with the dogs for a couple of days, and we did more exercise than normal. He was fine with it. Then about a week later, he was in an awful lot of pain. Didn't know why. I was sure it was linked to his muscles, but I wasn't sure. They can't tell you, can they? I was 90% sure. He had loads of pain relief, and he was on like bed rest for like 3 weeks. And yeah, he was on like really strong painkillers, and he was showing me signs that he really was not happy. Since then, we've been doing hydrotherapy and physio. We've had a few adjustments to his life. We kind of know what's going on with him now. He's still having his chiropractic work. And generally, we're seeing improvements. But every now and again, he has little dips. So obviously, all this stuff, at the moment, you'd look at him and go, well, he's not in pain. He's not limping. But there's so many subtle certain things that we can see that tell us our dogs are in pain without us knowing that that's why it's there. So I thought it's a really good topic to talk about. So obviously, we've got the obviously, let me finish talking about Dave first. So obviously right now we now know that as he's got older, so he's nearly 8, bless him. So we've always known he's not the healthiest of dogs because he's a big boy, big boned, big build. He's obviously got his genetic condition. He's a lab who obviously are more prone to certain things. So we've obviously discovered since having hydrotherapy and his physio that he's got arthritis in 3 of his legs. 3 of his paws and 1 of his legs. He's got his dodgy shoulder is still there. And it's a deep injury that he kind of lives with and is tolerated and kind of got accustomed. You know how you compensate for something. But because he's compensating for that, it's also putting his back leg out a little bit. So he's got a lot, he's aging. That's it comes to all of us. He's aging, and obviously as dogs get older, it's hard to give them exercise when they're starting to get aches and pains. So we're having to be really careful with his diet, which we've always done. But it's extra things. So we now know it's arthritis, his dodgy shoulder, his dodgy back. He's falling apart, love him, but he's still the happiest boy ever. But we're obviously doing a lot more things to help him out. So a lot of things that we don't realise have a massive impact are things that we do when they're young and growing that we just don't realise is going to have injuries or, sort of exacerbate things when they're older. So, for example, I was always told getting in and out of water wasn't good for dogs because they're going from hot to cold, hot to cold. Obviously, Dave's a lab, he's in and out of water all the time. So they say that makes you prone to arthritis. Whether that's like hearsay or factual, I don't actually know. But things like playing fetch, running, jumping, catching, landing are all not good for joints that can cause arthritis further down the line. Jumping on and off sofas, jumping in and out of cars. We know it has implications. When they're young and healthy, we think, it's all good. And we don't think about further down the line. And I myself am totally guilty of this. And in the last sort of 6 months, we've been really hot on being much better with Dave in terms of using a ramp in and out of the car, making sure he steps up onto the sofa rather than jumping up and down. We're making sure we have the runner back in the kitchen. So I have carpet throughout, which is really good for dogs, FYI. But he has to go through our kitchen to go out. And we've put the runner down that we tend to have when we have an older dog. So he's got a little bit of carpet to go through so he's not slipping and sliding on floors. Just like us, one little slip can cause a problem, trap a nerve or jar a muscle, and then obviously if it's not fixed it can carry on being an issue. That's obviously what's happened with Dave and his shoulder, love him. So little things that we can look at that show pain, and these are things that I'm noticing with Dave. So I'll talk about the things I noticed with Dave as well as general stuff. So one of the big things as a dog trainer we often see is that one of the first signs of pain is a dog's changing character. So, for example, my dog's always been happy and relaxed and suddenly they've started doing this. So it could be that suddenly they've started being reactive. They're barking at things they haven't barked at before. They are, being more noise sensitive. So they hear noises and they're reacting to noises a little bit more than normal. It could be that they're starting to resource guard. They're starting to not want to do things. They're starting to not want to sit when you ask them to sit. Slight changes in behaviour we just think are, something going on. But you think about it, it can be pain related. Dogs can't say, do you know what? I've just got a little bit of a sore muscle. Just need to, massage that out. Just need to whip down the chiropractor. They can't tell us that they've got something sore. So they tend to stick with it and carry on. They generally as well have quite high pain thresholds. So dogs are a bit daft when they have pain and they don't think, "Ooh, that hurts, I won't do it." They think first, act later, and go, "Ah, I probably shouldn't have done that. That hurt." Dave's classic for that. He'll do stuff, and he doesn't realise it's hurting until it's hurting, if that makes sense. So, for example, we took them, and I shouldn't have probably taken them, but I thought it's his little treat. I took him to the pond we go to when we go swimming in the fields, and I thought he'd be okay because he's been having all his treatment. And he went in once. And I thought, I'm only going to let you in once because the others tend to go in a couple of times. I let him in once. He struggled to get out of the water a little bit, so I could tell he was using his muscles a bit more. I didn't let him go in again. He was crying, going, "But I want to go back in," like proper brat. You know, I'm feeling left out, like real FOMO. Little, you can imagine like a child going, "It's not fair." That was him. And then obviously, the week later, he was back to being in pain again. So I felt really terrible about it. But he would have kept going. He would have kept going and kept going and kept going. So it's obviously where if we can recognise when our dogs are in pain or things that are going to cause them pain, we have to be the bad cop and go, "No, I know you want to do it. Not hurting right now, but it's going to hurt later." And if we don't know the signs, then obviously we can't do that. So small changes in behaviour are really significant. If you think about a dog who has always been good at sitting and doesn't like sitting, it might be that there's muscles twitching or pain being caused. If you're in pain, you tend to be a little bit more irritable. That's where we can start to see a little bit more resource guarding or snapping at people or just being a bit more grumpy, or reacting to noises. All of that is linked to pain, potentially. Not always. Let me just put that caveat out there. Not always, but it can have a part to play. So it's always worth checking it out. Another thing that I'm always conscious of and aware of, that again, I know a lot of people aren't, is your coat. The dog's coat pattern can change if they have pain. So I know in Rem's an easy one to sort of see it on because he's really, really smooth. His skin's like soft as velvet. He's lovely. And I know that he has ridges appear in certain places when he's got stuff going on with his muscles. And there's a new ridge appeared this week. So hence he's going to go and have a referral because I know that that's not right and there's probably something causing it. A few other changes as well in Rem recently. Rem's not showing me any signs of being in pain. But there's 2 or 3 little things that are kind of making me go, I'm going to get that checked out. So he's got an assessment this week or next week. So changes in coat patterns and swirls. Again, we just kind of think that's just their coat pattern. If it changes, it can be linked to the muscles tightening or restricting underneath the skin. So it's worth checking that out. Dogs generally, again, tend to show us in subtle ways by suddenly not doing something they normally would do. So say, for example, your dog's always jumped in the car and then suddenly they go, "No, I'm not jumping in the car." We go, "Can't they be stubborn?" But actually they're going, "Do you know what? It hurts a little bit when I jump in the car. I don't really want to." So little changes like that, when they stop doing something they've always done, or start, effectively, if you look at the changes in behaviour, if they stop doing something, it's also a sign they're potentially in pain. For Dave, one of the things he does is he hides. So I always know he's feeling a little bit more sensitive if he goes and sleeps under the stairs, because our stairs come into our living room. I hate it. All the heat goes up. So the draft comes down, the heat goes up. Not great, but it's what it is. He always hides and sleeps under the stairs, like curled up in a ball, like hidden in the corner, if he's in pain. Whether that's be "you can't get to me here and touch me," not that I would, but he always goes and hides. And when he was in a lot of pain before Christmas in November, he would go and hide in the flower bed at the bottom of the garden behind a tree. And I can't get him out of the corner, and he would not move. He was like, "No, I'm staying here. I'm hiding." So he hides when he's in pain. Not like because I'm trying to do anything to him. He just literally goes and takes himself and hides. And he's like, "No, no one come near me." That's one of the things that he can do. Some dogs obviously will go off their food. Some dogs will visibly start to show you signs that they're not comfortable. Some will not like to be touched. So things like just sitting and being stroked and they go, "No, go away." That can also be a sign that your dog is just in some form of pain and discomfort. They're so subtle that often we just wouldn't recognise them. And that's why it goes unrecognised until there's a big issue. We tend to forget the little bits and not see the little bits until there's a big issue. And I did it with Dave. I'm not saying I'm perfect with this at all, because I did it with Dave and it's annoying and I should have listened more. But sometimes it's so subtle you don't see it until there's a few different things aligning. And that's where I'm with Rem. That's where I am with Rem at the moment. I notice there's a few small things happening that make me go, I'm going to check it out. So sort of one of the other things you might see is things where, they start paying more attention to certain parts of their bodies. So like licking them. If they start licking a certain area, even if there's nothing to see, it might be because it hurts in some way. Changing the behaviour can be amazing. So big stuff like, they don't want to go for a walk, they refuse. It can be that they just sit and lick a certain part of their body. It can be they don't want to be touched in a certain way. There's so many subtle sort of changes that we would just overlook quite easily unless you know they're there. They're not as obvious as a big limp. A big limp is obvious, but other things are really subtle. Sometimes it's that they stop walking quickly, they start walking slower than normal, or they just point blank refuse to go for a walk on a walk. Like some dogs sit down. Sometimes it's down to environment, being scared, overwhelmed, needing a rest, but sometimes it's they're actually going, I just need a rest. Difficulty changing positions, if they've always quickly got up and down and suddenly they start to slow down. All of these things are really, really subtle, but they can all have a little bit of an impact. And I say sometimes it's nothing that your vet would look at and go, well, yes, they've got an injury. Sometimes it's the underlying stuff, the muscles. I think in dogs especially, muscle pains are overlooked because they're not visible. You have to get hands-on. So that's where a massage therapist, a physio, a chiropractor is great, because they can look at the muscles that are often overlooked. So I suppose it kind of all links back to dogs and body language as well. Body language is a really, really important thing to discuss. It's something we'll do a podcast episode on at some point. But it's really subtle. Communication with our dogs is very, very subtle. It's all so small and tiny. They hide pain so well. Because if you think about it, before they were domesticated, if you showed signs of pain, you were weak, you were an easy target. So dogs are supposed to hide their pain for protection, to protect themselves. So we as dog owners have to really almost play detective in a little way and really look at what is changing. It only comes from knowing your dog really, really well and looking and knowing what you're looking for. And that's why obviously learning a little bit about communication is really, really important. But some things it's just really, really hard to see. And one thing, obviously, again, look back at the episode with Jay. I can't remember what episode it was. But we talked a little bit there about, gait, and that dogs just changing how they move is really important. So if sometimes your dog just starts to move as they're walking, they just start to look a little bit off. Again, that can be a sign of pain. Sometimes it's scratching. It's so subtle and it's hard to know what you're looking for unless you're looking for it. But also it's easy to kind of convince yourself that there's not an issue. So it's always worth just kind of taking a note every now and again of going, what's normal, what's not normal? Have things changed? And obviously it's not going to necessarily stop. Like with Dave, for example, he's got arthritis. There's nothing I can do about that. So we know arthritis is degenerative. We know that most our labs are going to get arthritis at some point. It was inevitable. Have the things I've done with him in the past made it worse or not? Who knows? But hopefully now, by giving him all the things he needs, so obviously he's having weekly hydrotherapy, making sure he's not jumping in and out of the car and all those things, we'll stop it getting worse quickly. So we're at least prolonging the condition. I don't know what the technical term is, that we're stopping it from getting worse quickly. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know what I mean. And we're managing it with pain relief, lifestyle changes and treatment. So if, like this week, I noticed he was not feeling great again, I could have just carried on, but I'm starting to work out a pattern. And the patterns are really important. So I know his pattern is when he's done a little bit too much. So if he goes for his normal walk, which is normally about 45 minutes, and he goes at his own pace, he can speed up, he can slow down. He's not on a lead necessarily. I know 45 minutes of that is kind of his limit right now. Any more, and we see signs that he's starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I now need to go, okay, no more fun walks for you, which is really sad, but it's because I'm seeing a pattern in his behaviour that then I can respond to that, which is really, really important. So obviously this is not like a panic stations, is your dog in pain? Don't overanalyze this, guys. But it's more a case of just going, these are things you might see if your dog has underlying pain. And just be aware of them. So, if there is a change in behaviour, whether it's subtle or big, suddenly they become reactive or suddenly they start doing something they've not done before. So think if they're starting to do something they've never done before, or they're stopping to do things they've always done, change in behaviour, that can, along with all the other bits and pieces, be a sign. Changes in coat patterns, changes in diet, changes in walks, changes in their appetite, changes in how they're happy being touched or not happy being touched. All of those things can be possible signs that there is underlying pain. So it's worth having those assessed, whether it be by a vet or a massage therapist or a physio or a chiropractor or whatever else. They're the ones I use, that's why I mention them. But there's so many other treatments available to dogs too. Hopefully this has been a little bit useful. If it hasn't, let me know. If it has and it's a topic you want to explore a little bit more, let me know. And I will catch up with you all next week. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.